Small world, the world of informative flashcards. Flashcards and crimes against personal liberty and security. The crime known as kidnapping and serious illegal detention. Article 267. Kidnapping and serious illegal detention. Any private individual who shall kidnap or detain another, or in any other manner deprive him of his liberty, shall suffer the penalty of reclusion perpetua to death. 1. If the kidnapping or detention shall have lasted more than 5 days. 2. If it shall have been committed simulating public authority. 3. If any serious physical injuries shall have been inflicted upon the person kidnapped or detained, or if threats to kill him shall have been made. 4. If the person kidnapped or detained shall be a minor, female or a public officer. The penalty shall be death where the kidnapping or detention was committed for the purpose of extorting ransom from the victim or any other person, even if none of the circumstances above mentioned were present in the commission of the offense. The crime known as slight illegal detention. Article 268. Slight illegal detention. The penalty of reclusion temporal shall be imposed upon any private individual who shall commit the crimes described in the next preceding article without the attendance of any of circumstances enumerated. The same penalty shall be incurred by anyone who shall furnish the place for the perpetration of the crime. If the offender shall voluntarily release the person so kidnapped or detained within 3 days from the commencement of the detention, without having attained the purpose intended, and before the institution of criminal proceedings against him, the penalty shall be prison mayor in its minimum and medium periods and a fine not exceeding 700 pesos. The crime known as unlawful arrest. Article 269. Unlawful arrest. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who, in any case other than those authorized by law, or without reasonable ground therefor, shall arrest or detain another for the purpose of delivering him to the proper authorities. The crime known as kidnapping of minors. Section 2. Kidnapping of minors. Article 270. Kidnapping and failure to return a minor. The penalty of reclusion perpetua shall be imposed upon any person who, being entrusted with the custody of a minor person, shall deliberately fail to restore the latter to his parents or guardians. The crime known as slavery. Article 272. Slavery. The penalty of prison mayor and a fine of not exceeding 10,000 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who shall purchase, sell, kidnap or detain a human being for the purpose of enslaving him. If the crime be committed for the purpose of assigning the offended party to some immoral traffic, the penalty shall be imposed in its maximum period. The crime known as inducing a minor to abandon his home. Article 271. Inducing a minor to abandon his home. The penalty of prison correctional and a fine not exceeding 700 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who shall induce a minor to abandon the home of his parent or guardians or the persons entrusted with his custody. If the person committing any of the crimes covered by the two preceding articles shall be the father or the mother of the minor, the penalty shall be arresto mayor or a fine not exceeding 300 pesos, or both. The crime known as exploitation of child labor. Article 273. Exploitation of child labor. The penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who, under the pretext of reimbursing himself of a debt incurred by an ascendant, guardian or person entrusted with the custody of a minor, shall, against the latter's will, retain him in his service. The crime known as services rendered under compulsion in payment of debt. Article 274. Services rendered under compulsion in payment of debt. The penalty of arresto mayor in its maximum period to prison correctional in its minimum period shall be imposed upon any person who, in order to require or enforce the payment of a debt, shall compel the debtor to work for him, against his will, as household servant or farm laborer. Crimes against security Section 1. Abandonment of helpless persons and exploitation of minors. Article 275. Abandonment of person in danger and abandonment of one's own victim. The penalty of arresto mayor shall be imposed upon 1. Anyone who shall fail to render assistance to any person whom he shall find in an uninhabited place wounded or in danger of dying, when he can render such assistance without detriment to himself, unless such omission shall constitute a more serious offense. 2. Anyone who shall fail to help or render assistance to another whom he has accidentally wounded or injured. 3. Anyone who, having found an abandoned child under 7 years of age, shall fail to deliver said child to the authorities or to his family, or shall fail to take him to a safe place. The crime known as abandoning a minor. Article 276. Abandoning a minor. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who shall abandon a child under 7 years of age, the custody of which is incumbent upon him. When the death of the minor shall result from such abandonment, the culprit shall be punished by prison correctional in its medium and maximum periods. But if the life of the minor shall have been in danger only, the penalty shall be prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods. The provisions contained in the 2 preceding paragraphs shall not prevent the imposition of the penalty provided for the act committed, when the same shall constitute a more serious offense. The crime known as abandonment of minor by person entrusted with his custody, indifference of parents. Article 277. Abandonment of minor by person entrusted with his custody, indifference of parents. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon anyone who, having charge of the rearing or education of a minor, shall deliver said minor to a public institution or other persons, without the consent of the one who entrusted such child to his care or in the absence of the latter, without the consent of the proper authorities. The same penalty shall be imposed upon the parents who shall neglect their children by not giving them the education which their station in life require and financial conditions permit. The crime known as exploitation of minors. Article 278. Exploitation of minors. The penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods, and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon 1. Any person who shall cause any boy or girl under 16 years of age to perform any dangerous feat of balancing, physical strength, or contortion. 2. Any person who, being an acrobat, gymnast, rope walker, diver, wild animal tamer, or circus manager, or engaged in a similar calling, shall employ in exhibitions of these kinds children under 16 years of age, who are not his children or descendants. 3. Any person engaged in any of the callings enumerated in the next paragraph preceding who shall employ any descendant of his under 12 years of age in such dangerous exhibitions. 4. Any ascendant, guardian, teacher or person entrusted in any capacity with the care of a child under 16 years of age, who shall deliver such child gratuitously to any person following any of the callings enumerated in paragraph 2 hereof, or to any habitual vagrant or beggar. If the delivery shall have been made in consideration of any price, compensation, or promise, the penalty shall in every case be imposed in its maximum period. In either case, the guardian or curator convicted shall also be removed from office as guardian or curator, and in the case of the parents of the child, they may be deprived, temporarily or perpetually, in the discretion of the court, of their parental authority. 5. Any person who shall induce any child under 16 years of age to abandon the home of its ascendants, guardians, curators, or teachers to follow any person engaged in any of the callings mentioned in paragraph 2 hereof, or to accompany any habitual vagrant or beggar. The crime known as additional penalties for other offenses. Article 279. Additional penalties for other offenses. The imposition of the penalties prescribed in the preceding articles shall not prevent the imposition upon the same person of the penalty provided for any other felonies defined and punished by this code. The crime known as qualified trespass to dwelling. Section 2. Trespass to dwelling. Article 280. Qualified trespass to dwelling. Any private person who shall enter the dwelling of another against the latter's will shall be punished by arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 1,000 pesos. If the offense be committed by means of violence or intimidation, the penalty shall be prison correctional in its medium and maximum periods and a fine not exceeding 1,000 pesos. The provisions of this article shall not be applicable to any person who shall enter another's dwelling for the purpose of preventing some serious harm to himself, the occupants of the dwelling, or a third person, nor shall it be applicable to any person who shall enter a dwelling for the purpose of rendering some service to humanity or justice, nor to anyone who shall enter cafes, taverns, inn and other public houses, while the same are open. The crime known as other forms of trespass. Article 281. Other forms of trespass. The penalty of arresto menor or a fine not exceeding 200 pesos, or both, shall be imposed upon any person who shall enter the closed premises or the fenced estate of another, while either of them are uninhabited, if the prohibition to enter be manifest and the trespasser has not secured the permission of the owner or the caretaker thereof. Section 3. Threats and coercion. Article 282. Grave threats. Any person who shall threaten another with the infliction upon the person, honor, or property of the latter or of his family of any wrong amounting to a crime, shall suffer 1. The penalty next lower in degree than that prescribed by law for the crime be threatened to commit, if the offender shall have made the threat demanding money or imposing any other condition, even though not unlawful, and said offender shall have attained his purpose. If the offender shall not have attained his purpose, the penalty lower by 2 degrees shall be imposed. If the threat be made in writing or through a middleman, the penalty shall be imposed in its maximum period. 2. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos, if the threat shall not have been made subject to a condition. The crime known as light threats. Article 283. Light threats. Any threat to commit a wrong not constituting a crime, made in the manner expressed in subdivision 1 of the next preceding article, shall be punished by arresto mayor. The requirement known as bond for good behavior. Article 284. Bond for good behavior. In all cases falling within the 2 next preceding articles, the person making the threats may also be required to give bail not to molest the person threatened, or if he shall fail to give such bail, he shall be sentenced to destierro. The crime known as other light threats. Article 285. Other light threats. The penalty of arresto menor in its minimum period or a fine not exceeding 200 pesos shall be imposed upon 1. Any person who, without being included in the provisions of the next preceding article, shall threaten another with a weapon or draw such weapon in a quarrel, unless it be in lawful self-defense. 2. Any person who, in the heat of anger, shall orally threaten another with some harm not constituting a crime, and who by subsequent acts show that he did not persist in the idea involved in his threat, provided that the circumstances of the offense shall not bring it within the provisions of Article 282 of this Code. 3. Any person who shall orally threaten to do another any harm not constituting a felony. The crime known as grave coercion. Article 286. Grave coercions. The penalty of arresto mayor and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who, without authority of law, shall, by means of violence, prevent another from doing something not prohibited by law, or compel him to do something against his will, whether it be right or wrong. If the coercion be committed for the purpose of compelling another to perform any religious act or to prevent him from so doing, the penalty next higher in degree shall be imposed. John Robles Virtual Law Library. The crime known as light coercions. Article 287. Light coercions. Any person who, by means of violence, shall seize anything belonging to his debtor for the purpose of applying the same to the payment of the debt, shall suffer the penalty of arresto maior in its minimum period and a fine equivalent to the value of the thing, but in no case less than 75 pesos. Any other coercions or unjust vexations shall be punished by arresto menor or a fine ranging from 5 pesos to 200 pesos, or both. The crime known as other similar coercions. Article 288. Other similar coercions. Compulsory purchase of merchandise and payment of wages by means of tokens. The penalty of arresto maior or a fine ranging from 200 to 500 pesos, or both, shall be imposed upon any person, agent or officer, of any association or corporation who shall force or compel, directly or indirectly, or shall knowingly permit any laborer or employee employed by him or by such firm or corporation to be forced or compelled to purchase merchandise or commodities of any kind. The same penalties shall be imposed upon any person who shall pay the wages due a laborer or employee employed by him, by means of tokens or objects other than the legal tender currency of the laborer or employee. The crime known as formation, maintenance, and prohibition of combination of capital or labor through violence or threats. Article 289. Formation, maintenance, and prohibition of combination of capital or labor through violence or threats. The penalty of arresto maior and a fine not exceeding 300 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who, for the purpose of organizing, maintaining or preventing coalitions or capital or labor, strike of laborers or lockout of employees, shall employ violence or threats in such a degree as to compel or force the laborers or employers in the free and legal exercise of their industry or work, if the act shall not constitute a more serious offense in accordance with the provisions of this code. The crime known as discovering secrets through seizure of correspondence. Discovery and revelation of secrets. Article 290. Discovering secrets through seizure of correspondence. The penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon any private individual who, in order to discover the secrets of another, shall seize his papers or letters and reveal the contents thereof. If the offender shall not reveal such secrets, the penalty shall be arresto maior and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos. The provision shall not be applicable to parents, guardians, or persons entrusted with the custody of minors with respect to the papers or letters of the children or minors placed under their care or study, nor to spouses with respect to the papers or letters of either of them. The crime known as revealing secrets with abuse of office. Article 291. Revealing secrets with abuse of office. The penalty of arresto maior and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon any manager, employee, or servant who, in such capacity, shall learn the secrets of his principal or master and shall reveal such secrets. The crime known as revelation of industrial secrets. Article 292. Revelation of industrial secrets. The penalty of prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods and a fine not exceeding 500 pesos shall be imposed upon the person in charge, employee or workman of any manufacturing or industrial establishment who, to the prejudice of the owner thereof, shall reveal the secrets of the industry of the latter,